The night sky over the alien city was heavy with smoke and neon lights. A cold wind blew across the market square where the auction stage stood. The stage was made of rusted metal and sharp lights pointed down from above, trapping the Debtor girl in a cruel glow. She stood there barefoot, her wrists tied with thin iron bands that glowed faintly blue. The crowd gathered around her, faces hidden under hoods, eyes burning with greed. Everyone knew why she was here. She had debts too heavy to pay, and the law of this city was merciless. The punishment was always the same. Her body would be rented to men until the debt was gone. Tonight, 10 men had already paid for her. 10 men waiting like predators for their turn. Her heart beat so fast she thought it might tear out of her chest. She wanted to scream, to beg, but she knew begging meant nothing here. The overseer raised his hand, a tall creature with scales. Over his face, his voice cold as stone. Tonight this one pays with her flesh. 10 men have bought her for one night. Let the punishment begin. The crowd laughed. Some shouted in delight. Others cursed at her weakness. She lowered her head, shame burning her cheeks. She thought of her small room back in the slums, of her mother's empty grave, of the debts that had dragged her here. She had sold everything, her clothes, her furniture, even the little locket she once wore. But it had not been enough. Nothing was ever enough. The crowd shifted and she dared to lift her eyes. That was when she saw him, a man unlike the others. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in plain travel clothes that had dust from long journeys. His skin was not like the rest of them. It was pale, human. He stood at the edge of the circle, arms folded, eyes locked on her. He did not laugh, he did not shout. He only watched. His face was unreadable, but his gaze was steady, almost calm. For a moment she felt like she could breathe again, but then the overseer struck the metal rail with his staff. "First man, step forward." The crowd cheered. Boots scraped the ground as one of the renters, a thick-bodied alien with tusks, walked toward her. She trembled. Her knees almost gave way. She wanted to vanish, to sink into the floor, but the iron bands on her wrists pulled her back. The tusked man grinned, his teeth yellow under the lights. He reached for her chin, forcing her head up. "Dead girl," he growled. "Tonight you serve." His hand smelled of sweat and rot. Her stomach turned, but she did not resist. Resistance would only bring more pain. Then a voice cut through the noise, low, deep, and human. "Stop." The crowd fell silent for a moment. All eyes turned to the edge of the circle. The pale human had stepped forward, his boots crunching on the dusty ground. The overseer narrowed his eyes. "You are not the first. Renter, wait your turn." But the human did not stop. He kept walking until he stood only a few steps away from the stage. His gaze never left the girl. The tusked alien snarled and drew back, offended, but something in the human's calm stare froze him in place. The human spoke again, his voice steady. "I will take her first," the overseer hissed. The crowd began to murmur. This was not how things were done. Rules were strict. Orders could not be changed, yet the human's presence pressed down on them like unseen weight. The girl's breath caught in her throat. For the first time that night, hope flickered inside her chest. She did not know who this man was, or why he had chosen her. But she knew this. Her nightmare had just taken a turn, and nothing would ever be the same again. The iron door creaked as it opened into the chamber. The place smelled of smoke and damp stone. A single lamp hung from the ceiling, its flame shaking with every draft. The girl sat on a wooden bench, wrists still bound with glowing iron. Her body was tense, her breath shallow. She knew the first renter would come through that door. She told herself not to cry, not to show weakness, but her hands trembled anyway. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow and heavy. Her heart pounded in her ears. She braced herself for the tusked alien who had touched her chin before. She imagined his claws, his rough grip, his foul laughter. Her throat closed in fear. She wanted to shrink into the shadows, but there was nowhere to hide. The door opened fully and the figure stepped inside. She froze. It was not the tusked alien. It was him, The human. His tall frame filled the doorway, the lamplight casting his face in sharp lines. He stepped inside and the door shut behind him with a heavy thud. For a moment there was only silence between them. She stared at him, not knowing if she should feel relief or more fear. He looked at her wrists first, the glowing iron biting into her skin. His eyes darkened, not with hunger, but with something else. Anger. Then he looked at her face, her lowered eyes, her trembling shoulders. Slowly, he spoke. "What is your name?" She blinked in confusion. No one had asked her that. All night. She swallowed hard. Her voice was small, weak. "Lyra," she whispered. The human crouched down in front of her. He was close now, close enough for her to see the tired lines around his eyes, the scars on his hands. His voice was softer when he repeated, "Lyra." It was as if he wanted to remind her that she was still a person, not just a debtor to be used. She dared to lift her eyes, just a little. Why are you here?" He leaned back slightly, resting his arms on his knees. "Because I could not watch them break you." His words were steady, simple, but they struck her heart harder than any chain could. She shook her head. "You don't understand. This is punishment. There are rules. If you refuse, they will kill you." Her voice broke. "And me too." For a moment his jaw tightened, but then he gave a short nod. "I know the rules, but rules are made by those who fear power. Tonight those rules will not decide for me." Her breath caught. She could not tell if he was mad or simply brave beyond reason. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small flask. He uncapped it and held it to her lips. "Drink," he said. She hesitated, but the dryness in her throat was unbearable. She took a sip. Water. Clean, cool water. Her eyes widened as if it were a miracle. She could not remember the last time someone gave her something without demanding anything back. Her fear began to shift into confusion. This man was not like the others. He had paid, yes. He had claimed her, yes. But instead of using her, he was protecting her. It made no sense. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "When the overseer comes to check, stay quiet. Let them think I am following the law, but I will not hurt you. Not tonight. Not ever." Her chest tightened. Tears burned. Her eyes, though, she fought to keep them hidden. She whispered, "Why?" He paused as if searching for the right words. At last he said, "Because I was once like you. Sold, rented, broken. I know what it does to a soul." The chamber seemed to grow colder, the shadows deeper. Lyra stared at him. The man who should have been her first tormentor, yet instead sat before her as her shield. She could not understand it, not yet, but her heart felt the spark of something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Outside, voices roared in the hall. Guards moved, men laughed, the overseer barked orders. The night was far from over, but inside this small chamber, a new bond was forming, a bond that defied the rules, defied the punishment, and threatened to change everything. The chamber was silent except for the faint crackle of the lamp. Lyra sat stiff on the wooden bench, the flask of water still warm in her hands. She could not believe this man's words. Every part of her life had taught her one truth. Men who rented her body only wanted to use it. But this human was different. He had not touched her with hunger. He had given her water. He had spoken her name like it had meaning. Still, fear clung to her bones. Outside the door, the sounds of laughter and boots on stone grew louder. The other renters were waiting. 10 men had paid, and they would not leave without what was promised. If the human refused them, the overseer would punish them both. She stared at him, her lips trembling. "They will know," she whispered. "They will check. If they see I am untouched, we are both dead." The human leaned forward, his eyes steady. Then and they will not see. They will think I followed the rules. His calm voice struck her with confusion. She did not know whether to feel safe or terrified. He rose to his feet and walked to the iron door. He placed his ear against it. Footsteps moved in the hall. The guards were close. He turned back to her quickly. "Lie down on the bench. Pretend you are too weak to stand." Her stomach tightened. "Why?" "Because weakness is the only shield they will believe. If they think you cannot take more, they will push you aside for the next." She hesitated, but his tone carried no cruelty, only urgency. Slowly she lay down, her arms folded tight, her body curled. The wooden bench creaked under her weight. He pulled the thin blanket from the corner of the room and draped it over her. For a moment she was stunned. He covered her like someone would cover a child, gentle and careful. Then came the sound. The iron latch scraped. The door opened. The overseer stepped inside, his scaled face twisted in suspicion. 2 guards stood behind him. Their eyes fell on Lyra's still form. "Done already?" the overseer hissed, his tongue flicking. The human straightened. "She is weak," he said flatly. "She nearly fainted. I told you before. 10 men in one night will kill her." The overseer narrowed his eyes. "That is the punishment." The human's jaw tightened. "Then you will have a corpse before dawn. I paid for her, not for a body that dies on the floor." His voice was sharp, firm, filled with challenge. The overseer hissed again, glancing at the guards. He seemed ready to argue, but the girl's fragile breaths and pale face made his words falter. At last he grunted. "Fine. She rests now. But the others will not wait long." He slammed them, door shut. The sound echoed through the chamber. Lyra sat up slowly, her eyes wide. Her heart was pounding from the risk he had taken. "You lied for me," she whispered. The human turned to her, his shoulders heavy. "Not a lie. The truth. You cannot survive 10 men, and I will not let them destroy what little strength you have left." Her lips trembled. She wanted to ask why again, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she stared at him as if trying to see through his skin into his heart. She saw no greed there, no cruelty. Only something she had forgotten existed: mercy. He crouched near her once more. His voice softened. "I don't know how long I can keep this up, but while I can, you are safe with me." Her chest ached with emotions she did not understand. Fear, hope, confusion, gratitude. It was too much at once. She lowered her head, whispering so softly he almost did not hear. "Why do you care?" For a long moment, he did not answer. His eyes drifted to the scars on his hands, the marks left from chains long ago. At last he said, "Because I remember what it feels like when no one cares." The lamp flickered. Outside, voices rose again, demanding their turn. The night was far from over, and danger pressed closer with every breath. But inside that chamber, a seed of something new had been planted. Hidden kindness, a bond stronger than rules, a spark that might one day grow into fire. The night outside the chamber grew louder with every passing minute. The air carried the noise of impatient voices and the thud of fists against the walls. 10 men had paid. 10 men demanded their turn. The overseer would not wait much longer. Lyra sat on the wooden bench, her wrists still bound with glowing iron, her heart racing like a trapped bird. Every breath she took felt heavy with fear. The human stood near the door, his arms crossed, his jaw hard. He could hear the chaos building outside. He knew the overseer would come back, and this time excuses would not be enough. Lyra's eyes followed him, wide and uncertain. She whispered, "They will force you to leave me. You cannot stop them." He turned to her slowly. His eyes were sharp, steady like steel. "I can." She shook her head. "You cannot fight them all. There are guards, overseers, buyers. If you resist, they will kill you." His lips curved into the faintest of smiles, not of joy but of defiance. "Let them try." The sound of the latch broke the silence. The iron door slammed open and the overseer stepped in with 2 guards at his back. Behind them, the hallway glowed red with lamps and filled with the echo of shouts. The overseer's scaled face twisted with anger. The next man waits. Move. Aside. Human. The human did not move. He took a step forward, standing tall, his shadow covering Lyra. No. The overseer blinked, then laughed, a cold hiss like breaking glass. No? You dare refuse? The human's voice was calm but heavy with force. She is not fit to take more. If you push her, she will die. And if she dies, you lose everything. No debt repaid, no buyers satisfied. The overseer's eyes narrowed. Then what do you suggest? Shall we return their credits? Do you think they will accept that? They want flesh, not excuses. The human reached into his coat and pulled out a small pouch. It jingled with the sound of metal chips. He tossed it at the overseer's feet. Double what they paid. Cancel their turns. Tonight she is mine alone. The crowd outside roared in protest. The guard stiffened, uncertain. The overseer bent down, picked up the pouch, weighed it in his clawed hand. His eyes glittered with greed, but also suspicion. You would pay so much. For her? The human's face did not change. Yes. For a long moment, the overseer studied him. The chamber was heavy with silence, broken only by Lyra's quick, fearful breaths. Then the overseer bared his teeth. No, the rules are the rules. 10 men paid, 10 men get their prize. You cannot buy freedom with coins. He turned to the guards. Drag him out. The guards stepped forward, hands reaching for the human. Lyra gasped, her body tensed, expecting violence, expecting blood. But the human raised his hand, palm open. His voice cut through the noise, like a blade. Touch me, and I swear not one of you will walk away tonight. The guards froze. Something in his tone, something in his eyes made them hesitate. The overseer hissed again, furious. You cannot fight us all. The human stepped closer, his presence heavy like a storm. He leaned in, his voice low, meant only for the overseer. Then hear me. When I give the word, she will run. She will vanish into the alleys, and you will never find her again. Your debt chains will break. Your market will be mocked. Is that what you want? Lyra's heart skipped. She stared at him, realizing his words were not only a threat, they were a plan. The overseer snarled, torn between greed, fear, and rage. The guard shifted uneasily. The crowd outside grew restless, pounding on the walls. The human did not wait for an answer. He turned his head slightly toward Lyra and whispered the words that made her blood run cold and hot all at once. Run when I say. The air in the chamber grew heavier with each heartbeat. The overseer glared, the guards tense, the voices of impatient men echoing from the hall. Lyra clutched the blanket tight around her body, her heart racing. She could feel it. Something was about to break. The human stood tall, eyes locked on the overseer, calm like a hunter waiting for the right moment. Then it happened. The overseer hissed and raised his hand to signal the guards. The human's voice cut through the noise. Now! Lyra did not think. She pushed herself up, the blanket falling to the floor, and sprinted toward the door. The guards lunged to block her, but the human moved first. His fist slammed into one guard's jaw with a crack, sending the alien crashing into the wall. The second guard swung a baton, but the human caught his wrist, twisted it hard, and shoved him backward into the overseer. The chamber exploded with shouts. Run! The human barked again. Lyra's bare feet slapped against the cold stone floor as she dashed into the hallway. Red lamps flickered overhead, shadows stretching like claws across the walls. The crowd of men outside roared with anger when they saw her. Hands reached for her, claws swiped at her arms, but fear drove her faster. She slipped past them like smoke, her small frame darting between bodies. Behind her, the sound of chaos thundered. The human fought his way out of the chamber. His blows were quick, brutal, filled with the strength of someone who had survived battles before. Men shouted in pain, guards cursed, weapons clattered to the floor. Lyra glanced back once and saw him swing a broken staff like a blade, clearing a path through the mob. Her lungs burned, her legs weak, but she forced herself onward. Down one corridor, then another, twisting through the maze of the market hall. Everywhere she turned there were more men, more faces twisted in rage. "Catch her!" someone screamed. She stumbled, nearly falling, but hands grabbed her shoulders and pulled her upright. She gasped in terror, thinking it was a guard. But it was him. The human had caught up, his chest heaving, sweat glistening on his face. "This way," he said sharply, pulling her into a narrow side passage. They ran together through the dark corridor. The passage was cramped, walls dripping with damp. Rats scattered under their feet. Lyra's breath came in ragged gasps, her heart thundering. We cannot escape," she whispered. "They will hunt us forever." The human's grip tightened on her hand. "Then let them hunt. But they will not take you tonight." Behind them the shouts grew louder. Torches lit the walls as guards poured into the passage. The human pushed Lyra ahead. "Keep moving!" They burst into a courtyard lit by a broken moon. Old crates and rusted machines lay scattered. The human scanned the shadows, eyes sharp. He spotted a broken gate at the far end. "There!" But the overseer's voice echoed across the yard. "Do not let them leave." Dozens of footsteps closed. In. The human spun, grabbing a loose pipe from the ground. He stood between Lyra and the approaching guards, his stance unshaken. "Go!" he shouted to her. Lyra hesitated, tears burning her eyes. She wanted to obey, to run, but her legs refused. She could not leave him alone. She turned back, clutching a shard of wood she had picked up from the ground. Her voice shook but carried strength. "I will not leave you." The human looked at her in shock, then nodded once, almost proud. "Then we fight together." The courtyard erupted in violence. Guards charged, torches flashing. The human swung the pipe, striking one across the chest. Lyra ducked low, stabbing her shard into another's leg. They fought side by side, the fire of survival burning in their eyes. Finally, the gate gave way under their combined effort. They stumbled through into the night streets, the city sprawling before them like a dark ocean. Behind them, shouts and torches still burned, but they were free, for now. Breathless, hearts pounding, they leaned against a wall in the shadows. Lyra's body shook, but her eyes shone with something new. Not just fear, but courage. She looked at him and whispered, "You saved me." The human shook his head, blood running down his arm. "No, we saved each other." And with those words, their escape truly began. The city stretched behind them like a monster of stone and fire. Lyra and the human slipped through the empty alleys, their lungs burning, their bodies aching. The night air was cold, sharp against their skin. Every sound made her flinch, shouts. In the distance, dogs barking, the clang of metal doors. She expected the overseer's guards to appear at any moment. The human led her through twisting paths until they reached a broken archway. Behind it lay a forgotten courtyard where weeds grew tall, and shadows hid every corner. An old building stood there, its roof half collapsed, windows broken. He pushed the heavy door open and guided her inside. The room smelled of dust and rust. Broken furniture lay scattered, a fire pit cold in the center. But it was quiet. No footsteps followed. For the first time that night, silence wrapped around them. Lyra sank onto the floor, her legs shaking so badly she thought they might break. She hugged her knees, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. "They will find us," she whispered. "They always find the runaways." The human crouched near the fire pit, pulling out a flint from his coat. Sparks flew until a small flame flickered to life. The glow lit his face, scarred, tired, but steady. "Not tonight," he said. "This place is forgotten. They will not search here." She stared at him in the firelight. For hours he had fought for her, risked his life, even bought her freedom with his own coins. Yet she knew nothing about him. "Why?" she asked suddenly, her voice trembling. "Why risk yourself for me? You do not even know me." He sat back silent for a moment. His gaze drifted to the fire. The light danced in his eyes. Finally, he spoke. Because I do know you. Not your face, not your name, but your chains. I wore them once. Her breath caught. She leaned closer. You. He lifted his left sleeve. In the firelight, she saw deep scars wrapping around his wrist, marks burned into the flesh. Years ago, I was taken in a war. They sold me like cargo, forced me into the same punishment halls. I learned what it means to be property. I swore, if I ever walked free, I would never watch it happen to another soul without fighting back. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she saw him not as a stranger, but as someone who carried the same pain she did. Her voice cracked. Then you know. The shame, the fear, the endless nights. He nodded slowly. I know. And I know it does not define you. Silence stretched between them, heavy but warm. The fire popped, filling the room with faint smoke. Lyra touched her wrists, the glowing iron bands still locked tight. These marks, they will always remind me. The human reached into his coat again and pulled out a small tool, sharp and strong. He took her hands gently. Then let us change what they remind you of. With careful pressure, he pressed the tool into the lock. Sparks flew, metal groaned, and at last the iron band snapped open. They fell to the floor with a heavy clink. Lyra gasped, pulling her freed wrists to her chest. She stared at the faint bruises and burns, then at him. For the first time in years, her arms were her own. She whispered, I am free. The human smiled faintly. Not fully, not yet, but tonight, yes. She wanted to thank him, but words felt too small. Instead, she leaned closer to the fire, letting its warmth touch her skin, letting the weight of chains fade from her shoulders. Outside, the wind howled through the broken windows. Somewhere in the city, the overseer raged, his men searching the streets. But here, in the ruins, hope had taken root. The human kept watch by the doorway, pipe still in his hand, eyes sharp. Lyra curled near the fire, exhaustion finally pulling her into sleep. As her eyes closed, one thought lingered in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, tomorrow could be different. The broken building shook with the sound of footsteps outside. Lyra woke with a start, her heart pounding. The fire had burned low, only faint embers glowing. The human stood at the doorway, pipe in hand, his body tense like a drawn bow. He did not look at her, only at the shadows moving beyond the broken windows. They found us, he said quietly. Her blood ran cold. Voices echoed in the night, rough and angry. Torches flickered through the cracks, casting long flames across the ruined walls. The overseer's hiss carried above the noise. Search every corner. Bring me the girl and kill the human. Lyra scrambled to her feet. Fear clawed at her throat, but her wrists were free now. She was no longer chained. She moved to his side, clutching a broken piece of wood like a weapon. We cannot fight them all, she whispered. He glanced at her, his eyes steady, unshaken. We do not need to fight them all. We just need to show them we are not theirs anymore. The door crashed open. Guards stormed in, weapons raised. The human swung the pipe with brutal speed, knocking one back into the wall. Another lunged forward, but Lyra struck first, jamming her shard of wood into his side. The guard howled in pain and fell. More poured in. The room filled with chaos, shouts, clashing metal, the crackle of fire as a torch hit the wall. Smoke rose, choking the air. Lyra coughed, eyes stinging, but she kept fighting, every swing of her arm fueled by anger that had slept inside her for years. The overseer stepped through the smoke, his scaled face twisted with fury. His claws gleamed in the firelight. You dare defy me, human? You dare steal what belongs to the market? The human stood tall, blood running down his arm, his chest heaving. She belongs to no one. The overseer snarled and leapt forward, claws slashing. The human blocked with his pipe, sparks flying. They struggled, the overseer stronger, faster, but the human's will burned like iron. He twisted, shoved, struck hard across the overseer's jaw. The creature roared and staggered back. Lyra grabbed a fallen torch. Her hands shook, but she lifted it high. She looked at the overseer, at the chains that had bound her, at the years stolen from her life. Fire burned not just in the torch, but in her eyes. With a cry, she hurled it at him. Flames burst across his cloak, fire eating through the fabric. The overseer screamed, thrashing, his scales cracking under the heat. Guards froze in shock, their leader writhing in fire. The human shoved him back into the crumbling wall. The old stone gave way, and with one final roar, the overseer fell into the collapsing rubble, fire swallowing him whole. The remaining guards backed away, fear breaking their courage. The fire spread quickly, smoke filling the building. The human grabbed Lyra's hand. "We have to go, now!" They ran through the back, the collapsing ruins crashing down behind them. The night air hit their faces as they stumbled into the alley. Flames lit the sky, the overseer's empire burning with him. The city roared with panic, but the guards did not follow. Fear of the fire, fear of rebellion, drove them away. At last, they reached the outskirts, a hill that overlooked the city. Lyra collapsed to her knees, gasping, her body weak but her spirit alive. She looked at him, the man who had fought beside her, who had given her freedom when no one else dared. Tears ran down her face, but this time they were not only from fear. "You saved me," she whispered. The human shook his head, lowering himself beside her. His eyes softened. "No, Lyra, you saved yourself. I only reminded you that you could." She stared at the burning city below, the smoke rising like a warning to all who traded in chains. For the first time in her life, the night sky felt wide, open, endless. She turned back to him, her voice small but steady. "What now?" He looked at her, the faintest smile on his scarred face. "Now we build a life that belongs to us, not to debts, not to chains, only to freedom." The wind carried the smell of smoke, but also the promise of dawn. Together they rose and walked into the darkness, leaving the past behind and stepping toward a future neither of them had ever dared to dream.